Where do we want to start? Did you have any questions like burning in your mind?
I'm starting with jealousy because I was stuck at a teacher convention.
The scary horror.
Where,
Yeah.
where I literally had to, and I'm not exaggerating, the backup generators went down and my phone after 2 days had no power. I had to do 5 flights of stairs in the pitch dark by myself. So tell me what cool things you were doing while I was trapped alone in a stairwell in the dark.
Well, it wasn't that.
Yeah, I wasn't trapped in a stairwell.
I wish it was spicy, but there was no spiciness in that black stairwell.
Well, and Teresa and I couldn't get into the spicy, there was a spicy session about women writing women desire. We didn't get into that one though. It was
we didn't
full.
get into that one. And then there was another one about like writing the horny woman, and that one was full too. Couldn't get into that one, but it was good. It was, so it's primarily panels and sessions. They were about an hour and a half each. Then you had a 20-minute break. There was also a very extensive book fair, and exhibitor space, downstairs as well. The convention, the panels would start as early as 9 and then go as late as about 4:30.
Yeah.
And then there were a lot of evening activities too at close hotels or at further away hotels and bars and restaurants you could Uber to. So no, it was a lot. I think most of the sessions that I attended were really, really good and really helpful. Some of them, we attended, I think the ones that Molly and I really enjoyed were ones on like fairy tales and folklore. The horror writing one was really good. Molly did one on, the monster within.
Yeah. I like that one a lot.
And
we did go ahead.
Just so we can condense it because it's a lot of information.
Yeah.
Can we just break it down for like, can we do like some aha moments for development, then some aha moments for like transitions, like
sure,
and then some line by line. So like, let's start with like, what are some things about like crafting your idea, coming up with your idea and like crafting your story that you learned that you're like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to tell Morgan.
I have one and I can't wait to tell you. Hopefully I'm not stealing the limelight from Teresa. So
not at all.
I went to a session. Oh, and to answer Sue asked how many sessions were going on at the same time. 20 to 30 at each time-ish. Okay, so I went to a panel about monsters and writing monsters. And there was a lot of really, really fascinating things in there, but I wanted to touch on one because it talks about developing your story. And it was someone who talked about the rules of monsters and what you learn about society and what you learn about your story through the rules that you give your monsters. And specifically, she talked about vampires and the rule that many vampires have, which is they can't enter the house without an invitation. And she made up this really interesting, really great point is that's not a rule that's meant for the protagonist or whoever. That's not a defense against vampires because they always get in. They always get in anyway, and they always find a way to hurt you anyway. It's just a way to make that hurt more when they get in. It's a way you can now blame the victim. People will say, why you knew the rule. Why did you let the vampire in anyway? You knew what was happening. Why would you do this? And yeah, it's not this epiphany of like, oh, this rule isn't there to help you. This rule is there to like make it even worse when you're attacked. Make it even worse when you're fighting this monster. And then you take on, the protagonist, whoever it is, like somehow then feels stupid and takes on blame for that, which is really fascinating to me.
Well, and it's also, go ahead.
Yeah, it gives the antagonist some humanity. So it balances out like humanity in the sense that they're not always bad and the good guy's not always good. So it decreases the black and white polarization of the protagonist to antagonist, right?
Good. I was also going to say it increases the tension as well, depending on how the writer or the director or cameraman or whatever wants to view it, in that you could have the viewer or the reader being like, oh my gosh, they got in. Oh my gosh, the protagonist has no idea that they managed to turn into ash and creep under the door. I'm making this stuff up. Um, um, and so that also increases the tension. But that was an interesting point about how it increases. So could you talk
What
a
I'm
little bit?
saying?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me a
So
second, but
yeah, when you write protagonist and antagonist, one of the things American authors get criticized for a lot is this Hollywood superficial view of the world, where you have one that's all good and one that's all bad. And that is in literary fiction looked down upon very, very much, because in the real world, no person is all good or all bad. They're all complicated. So the best antagonists have this kind of likability or this kind of relatability, or you understand their backstory, and they have a few qualities that could allow a redemption arc, or that you can see yourself in the antagonists themselves. And then that creates a more authentic tension between the two. So it's a big thing in literary fiction specifically, that you don't make your monsters, quote unquote, which is why I think it's really interesting that you were talking about vampires, because they also come from the Byronic classic tradition of this. And also, of course, Frankenstein comes from this idea that he's not all bad, right? The monster's not all bad. So when you're talking about the original monster, the first monster in literature, he was very much human. He was very much a creator's story.
I mean, they talked about that one. Like, you can get debates in ages. Like, is the monster Frankenstein's monster, or is it the mob, or is it the doctor? Dr. Frankenstein for what he did.
It's the doc. Well, I'd say it's the doctor.
Well,
so that's how the rules, that goes back to what Molly was saying. So her first point was the rules are showing us reflections of society. So the rules that you give your monster, the Frankenstein, the mob, all characters being somewhat monster inside of me, which was the title of your thing, that even your protagonist has little monsters inside of them, in the sense that creates more realistic characters. So you don't get this very tropey, all perfect, wonderful protagonist and horribly evil, unrelatable antagonist. So I thought that was like really brilliant what you were saying.
Yeah. Teresa, did you have any developmental takeaways that you wanted to tell people about?
I did a panel. Well, Molly and I both did it on fairy tales, and I actually walked out of that and I'm like, I want to take a college class on fairy tales, please. It was it was so phenomenal. And I have to review my notes more on that one, but I think I walked away with a question: why do we continue to tell the exact same stories? And Disney is partially to blame for that. Snow White isn't our zeitgeist. But the Pied Piper isn't, Bluebeard isn't, and yet we're very familiar with these stories. That would be really fascinating to me, because original fairy tales were designed to be cautionary tales. Well, we've evolved beyond a lot of those cautionary tales, and yet we haven't. A lot of that, like Molly and I were talking about the 12 Dancing Princesses. It's my mom's favorite fairy tale. I've been wanting to do a rewrite of it. I've tried. It's a very difficult one. And the key takeaway is, hey, girls, listen to your father and don't stay up all night dancing, or I'm going to marry you off. We know now that that's not a good moral. Not a good thing. Yeah. But it still resonates with us. It's still a story we tell our daughters. Hey, be good.
I think it's very interesting. It's something they brought up in that panel, is that many fairy tales, you twist it just a little bit and the moral completely changes.
Right.
The framing changes the moral. So like we talked about Frankenstein, right? Who is the monster? And there have been so many retellings of that story in so many different ways that frame different characters as the monster, or as more monstrous than other characters, right? And the same is, they really dug into Pied Piper, right?
That was fascinating.
Yeah, who is the monster there? And I won't get too much into that one, because we don't have all the time in the world. But yeah, this interesting, Teresa said reframing, because so many of those morals you maybe don't apply in the modern world,
today's
in the
modern
same
worlds,
way.
Yeah.
But you can flip it and you find different nuggets to take out.
Or they do apply, or they apply in ways that we don't necessarily agree with anymore, but there's still people that do continue to agree with those. It's the polarization right now of society too.
Of
So,
obey your fathers, or we'll send you off to be married.
yep.
I feel like the Pied Piper is just social media.
That's one interpretation.
That, yeah.
There's a lot of interpretations of that one. What
All
other
right.
Morgan? You had a little more, or should we start? I've lost track of time in our stream here because we started and stopped and started and stopped.
So that was the macro one. I was just like,
Yep.
so let's do an aha moment at chapters and transitions. So like how to set up scenes. Yeah.
Tracy,
I don't think I got anything on that level. I did attend a class on teaching writing, and the place that professional development has. As you're teaching writing, you also should be talking about professionalism and querying and your future and what do you want your future to be and everything else. And I loved what one of the panelists said. She said that writing is a hard life. It is a difficult life. It is full of many rejections, but reframing the idea of rejections of disappointments, as in you got disappointed when you went to the store and they didn't have the drink that you wanted. Well, you handled that just fine. You can handle a rejection too. Or you got disappointed when a loved one kind of sort of let you down and you were like, but I thought you were gonna, all right. And you're disappointed, but you survived.
Yeah.
And reframing rejections in that way of I'm disappointed, but I'm okay. Rather than I got a rejection and I'm a sucky writer and I'm done.
I love that. So we'll hold
gorgeous.
That. So you just keep going because we're going to have disappointments in life. I mean, so yeah, I like that. And then, so for our final, because we got to wrap up because we're already close to time, but would you recommend that all writers go to this conference in person? Do you feel like it's better for beginning writers, intermediate writers, or advanced writers?
Yeah. I'm going to tackle this one because I see Teresa making the face. This writing conference was a great conference. It really focused in on people who are more interested in nonfiction, memoir, literary fiction, in that realm, especially people who are in academia, in MFA programs, or themselves like professors. It really, really and poetry.
Poetry
really
was huge.
Focused in on that world. So while there were fiction panels, while there were speculative fiction panels, it was really the minority. So if you are in, if you're in an MFA or you want to be in an MFA or you really love memoir, creative nonfiction, you love poetry, you love that aspect.
Short story collections.
Those were really big. That type of world in literary fiction, that is a place you would feel really comfortable and probably learn a lot. I still feel like I learned a ton, but we talked about there's 20 to 30 panels every session and like six, I think it was 6 sessions a day. That's a hard one to say. And of those like 20 or 30 panels every session, probably 15 to 16 of them would be around literary fiction, creative nonfiction, memoirs, that type of poetry.
how to have a poetry career, an MFA program, how to make the most of your MFA.
Yep.
Yeah.
Which is great if that is what you want to do and that is what you are tackling. If that is not you, then there's still value. There's still value, but just know that you are not the target audience, right? There's still value. You just might not be the main target audience.
So the way, because my husband asked, would you go again? And I was like, and maybe in a couple years. And he said, okay, would you go again if it was in LA or San Diego? And I said, oh yeah, probably. Because, driving distance, I still might get a hotel, but driving distance, I don't have to fly or take so much time off of work. And he goes, how about if it's not in San Diego or LA? And I'm like, probably not.
Yeah. But there were a lot of things that I really learned. We didn't even get into syntactic symbolism, guys. So that's something you wanted me to talk about more later. Just let me know. But yeah, there were some really, really fascinating things. Teresa and I didn't talk at all about the really good horror one, the folklore one, the accidental beginner podcast one we sat in and then had to leave.
Oops. Awkwardly.
All that.
Oh no, there's a big emergency. Okay, I'm on my way.
We thought it was how to use podcasts to teach in classes. And we have a podcast, and we were thinking, oh, we would love to have more teachers bring our podcast up in classes and be more accessible as a teaching mechanism. But it was actually how to teach kids how to podcast. So it started by pulling up Audacity, and we're like, oh no, I'm not in the right area. I already know how to do this. But anyway, it was fascinating at times, and there were so many people. The conference ran incredibly smoothly.
It was.
It was great. It was so much space. They had a big thought on.
This is the jealous face right here.
You would have loved it.
Smooth
you would have loved it.
And it's all literary fic, what I like. Talia's in the comments saying it's for her. It's like, me too. That's what I would have liked.
It had electricity. I mean, already a winner.
It probably had heat too, because we had no heat.
It did
a little
have heat.
Too warm in some places. Sue has a great question. I think
I'm the monster.
I think we're going to start wrapping it up. Sue here has a great question. Does the conference have the same focus every year? Great question. We're not really sure because we didn't go previous years, but we do know that it changes cities every year, and the committee that selects the paneling is local to that community. So the committee changes every year, so likely the focus does a little bit as well.
I would say it does. I was talking to one author, and he was a little disappointed because last time he'd been, there was a lot of stuff on children's literature, and that's what he writes. And this time there was nothing on children's literature.
Like 3 or 4 panels total.
Yeah. So my guess is it does change, probably depending on how popular the panels are, but then also the proposals as well. So
yeah. All right, ladies, should we wrap up this lovely hot steaming mess we've done today?
It's just thank you to everybody, and apology for it being so bumpy as we were getting started. So thank you, everyone. I think as much as we blame the ghost, I think a lot of it was my fault. So
no.
But was it? No.
No. I think we should just revel in the fact that in 24 hours, I'll edit the video so no one will know except for you lovely supporters who are here now, and we love you for being here now.
Yes,
thank you for being here. Appreciate you all.
All right. If you happen to watch all of this and you still like us, don't forget to like this video. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel so you see what we do next. And keep joining with us because we've got more in store. More excitement for sure.
Yay.
Right.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.